a special, if you need a little more space, you can feel free, to spread the chairs out a couple inches. Yeah, the social distance. We got a privilege tonight to get to be to be together in person in general, but we're going to record tonight as well and stream to our YouTube page because there were a lot of parents that were like, no, are you going to record it? Because we can't make it. And so we are going to do that tonight and have that as a resource as well. But kind of an informal night, if you were to come over to one of these guys' houses kind of thing and just get to sit in a living room with them and ask them about parenting, kind of that, I really wanted that feel, just an informal night where there's nothing outside of just some space to get together with some parents who we're going to introduce in a second and have them introduce themselves, and just get some time to ask questions about any of that season of parenting that you're in, from young to old, middle school, high school, college age, out of the house. They represent it all. And so Holly and I are super honored to have you guys with us. And thanks for joining us. And then for those that are watching later, or I guess if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, it'll pop up and show live right now as well. But yeah, so there could be a live audience. We've got 80 subscribers now, which is a big deal, guys. We're 20. If you have YouTube, by the way, and if you haven't subscribed to us, do it.
I don't subscribe.
You should do that because we're 20 away from being able to create our own URL at the end of it, so I can tell people to go to youtube.com/livingwaterlacey or something. But we don't. Right now, it's 1,000 numbers, and so I need 20 more subscribers before we get that. Anyway, so YouTube. I'll give you some kind of the ground rules not ground rules, but housekeeping, if you will, before we jump in. And then I'll pray and then have these guys introduce themselves. So up on the screen here, you can text questions tonight. It is anonymous, but it isn't.
Oh.
And here's why. Because if you've already subscribed to our Text Connect list, if you were part of our core team or our launch team from the summer, it may have pulled, your info may have come if you gave us a name or something, and it would be there. So your name could already be in the system and pop up. So but if you haven't, then it will be anonymous, and we won't know. We'll have the number, but we won't have the name. So it shouldn't be a big deal. You can ask. We're not going to, we will see it, but it doesn't matter. And so you can text throughout the night. It'll pop up right here, and we'll get to field those questions. And if you want to ask specific couples or specific people the question, you can do that. Otherwise, we'll just kind of throw it up to the panel here and just walk through some stuff. And I hope you're ready, because this is a great privilege for Holly and I, for you guys to be here. So let me pray, and then we'll jump in and have you guys introduce yourselves. Cool? Do you want to pray?
Sure. Lord, thank you for tonight. Lord, I thank you for all of the parents that are in this room. Lord, I thank you for all the parents that are listening to this at the moment that's right for them. And so, God, I just pray that tonight, Lord, our hearts are so just ready to receive and hear what you want to speak to us individually. Lord, that our hearts are open and sensitive. God, that our Lord, the areas we want to take so tightly control of, God, we just release them to you, and we trust you fully with our kids. God, would you speak tonight? Would you give clarity tonight? Would you give insight tonight? Would everyone walk away encouraged that where they're at, God, there's so much grace, but encouraged in how they can move forward in leading and loving their kids well. So we give you tonight. We give you everything that's said. May it glorify you. Amen.
Amen. So there should be a mic or two, or there should be one more down there. We'll have you guys rotate it down the line depending on who's speaking. But will you guys each take a moment and introduce yourselves and just share a little bit more about who you are and the world of marriage, parenting, so that way if people don't know who you are and why you're up here, they have somewhat of an insight. Pastor Tim, you want to start?
Yes. Hello. My name is Tim Wimberly. I'm married to Dana, who was going to be here. Actually, she was going to be here. I wasn't planning on being here, right. So I am taking her place. I am serving her. We've been married for 35 years, and we have 5 sons and 5 daughter-in-laws and almost 7 grandchildren. And we love God, and we still love each other, and we're glad to be here.
My name is Dave, and this is Lisa, my wife, Ochsner. We've been married 29 years. We have 5 children, 14 months apart. Our oldest is about 28, and we love God as well.
Hey, I'm Mike George.
I'm Robin.
We've been married for 10 years. I had to do the math. I don't know. Good job for keeping track. 35 years, 29 years. At 10 years, I'm like, what? And that's just me being honest. I'm like, what is it? And part of that is because we have 12 kids. And so, yeah, I think I covered it. I think 10 years married, 12 kids. And we're ready. We're excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So good. So what I'll do is if you guys want to, if you have your phone, even if you don't have a question yet, will you jump on and make sure that you're ready to go? Before you can send in a question, you have to text that word Lacey question, all one word, to that number to make sure that you're in the system there. So will you jump on it, even if you don't have a question yet? Will you jump in there so that way you can just text it when you're ready? And then just throughout the night, send them in. Here's how I'd love to jump in. And one of the things that came in through Instagram today, we had a couple different questions come in, were around the idea of if you could do something different that where you're sitting now in your season of parenting. What's one of the things? It doesn't have to be the biggest thing but just something that stands out that you look back on and you go, I wish I would have done that different. Maybe that you didn't see it in that moment, right? You were doing your best in that moment, but if you could look back and see, I would have done that part different. What's something that stands out? And then, Kenton, this one I think is the one that's a little quiet. It's on that second tab, so you might have to bump that one a little bit with the master volume too.
I would immediately. I would say yes more. Primarily, there's a lot there, but primarily the reason I would say yes more is because I said no way too often because it was inconvenient. Because I was tired, didn't want to do something, and so I robbed my kids. I robbed them of things that could have been really simple, and usually it was really simple things. It wasn't major things, but that's something I would do over.
Yeah.
I would change. So
That's really good. You can bring this one down a little bit, Kenton, and then I'm gonna have them share the other mic because I can tell this one's causing us a little feedback. So whenever somebody wants to talk, grab that one, or if you're closer to us, you can use this one here. But this one's pretty hot. Okay, so I'm gonna ask, kind of do one follow up to that before we have other people that might want to respond to that one. Recognizing that piece, saying yes more. Are there things that you would say can help a younger parent, or what season of child or of parenting when it comes to their kids' ages when you look back on it, you're like, that's where I wish I would have said yes more, versus another, or is it just a general? Like, was it when they were younger, or when they were older? Like, what would you?
yes,
Yeah.
I would say both. I would say both.
Yeah.
Because I think I actually recognized it as they were getting older, that I was doing it when they were younger, and then proceeded to continue to do that. And I remember exactly where I was when we had 2 kids that were still at home. The rest had already gone on, but I was on a walk, and I just had this little encounter with the Lord. I was just talking to the Lord as I was walking, and I just felt this really strong impression. It just would have been so simple to say yes to some of the littlest of things, and it was just out of my own self-centeredness, my own selfishness, that I just said no. And it wasn't, I didn't feel like this heavy, man, I'm a failure and I really blew it. It was just something I just knew that, and actually I've been able to talk with my kids because we have great relationships, and I ask them a lot questions like, so how did I do as a dad? How did I do, you know? And be kind, you know.
Yeah.
And they're truth tellers, so they just say it how it is,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Before we move on to other questions, anybody else want to respond to things that they would have done different?
I would probably have to say, don't sweat the little stuff. Give these kids every opportunity to succeed at this age, as well as being an adult. They're going to learn how to make their bed eventually, even as adults. But man, give them every opportunity to say yes as a parent, and everything will work out towards the end. Don't parent from being a parent of obedience, good behavior, because you're looking for a higher standard in which they are more capable, not quite capable of understanding at that point. I mean, if I can say that a little bit clearer, would be is don't parent from being good behavior, because that will eventually come if you build the core consistency of who they are. They're going to automatically fall into place on good behavior. That's probably the only thing. Anything, Lisa?
I feel like mine's very similar with that, is just not having the expectation when they're so young that we kind of have like a standard that we have for adults that we kind of put on little kids, which causes like their stress, our stress, things like that. And when you have that expectation that they're kids, and even like as adults, we make mistakes, and showing kids that grace, I think that was the thing that I wish for our oldest ones that we had done earlier.
Yeah. At any point, if you want to, anything that spurs on something from a question, even if it doesn't specifically address it, don't. I know, but don't hesitate, because you know that I know the gold that's in. I know the gold that's in you guys. Next question comes in, says, how do you encourage your child's relationship with Jesus without pushing them too hard?
Did I text that one?
I don't know. You didn't sign up for our text list, so I'm not sure. I'm just kidding. No, I don't know. Good question.
Well, I never said the ages of our kids, so some people may be wondering. But our oldest is 16, and then our youngest is 3 months, and it's everywhere in between. So we don't have any adults in the house yet. So we're still kind of walking this journey of trying to figure that out. And maybe it's a journey you continue to walk for the rest of your life. Yeah. But for us, it's being able to fill our home with the Spirit of, like, just the Holy Spirit, right? So it could be, like, what music do you listen to in the house? I mean, Robin's really good at this, at, like, just filling our house with worship music, like, all the time. And it could be just, like, because we have a speaker in the kitchen, and she'll just have, like, Maverick City playing or whatever. Or she'll just have, just stuff like that playing. So for us, like, that worship, that music is a big, and for any of you that know me, like, I love music. I love worshiping the Lord. Same with Robin. So that's a big piece for us. And I think too is just having conversations with your kids about Jesus. Conversation that I have with my oldest two all the time. Because we have a lot of, and they hate it because I have a lot of, like, really deep, like, conversations. When I come and I'm like, let's talk, they're like, dang it, because it's like, I can go for like 45 minutes. Maybe that's something I'd do differently, is talk for a shorter amount of time. But one of the things I always talk to them about is just, like, I want them to be able to see themselves the way that Jesus sees them. And I also don't want them, because I'm not perfect. I tell them that all the time. I say I make mistakes constantly. In fact, I have conversations with them, which is not easy, and a lot of times I fail and I don't have a conversation, and I should. But there are times when I do have a conversation where I made a mistake. And I come to them and I said, hey, I made a mistake. And in that moment, I also say, and just so you know, God doesn't make mistakes. The way that you see me as your father and the mistakes that I make, that's not who God is. Because that's a journey that I've been on for a long time, is the way that my father raised me, and I love him. He's amazing, and I honor him. But he's a human being. He's not perfect. And so the way that I saw God for a long time, and still have been working through this, and probably will work through it for the rest of my life, is this perception, this filter that I have on to say, hey, God is this way, and realize, oh, that's actually the way that I see my earthly father. And so basically what I'm getting, I don't even remember the original question, I'm sorry. but you know, to how do we connect our children to Jesus without pushing them, without being like, hey, you got to do this, or you got to go to church, or you got to, do that kind of thing. It's just I think it's trying to organically have those conversations with them. And it can be when you're in the car. It can be when you're just having those kind of like life to life conversations. It can be you turning worship music on, whatever it is that that you do. I think that just having it as part of who you are and part of your life is critical.
I would say we've practiced it as a couple, is to bring everything back to the scriptures. If there is a moral value question, it's based upon what the scriptures say, even at, once again, this age. It's, in other words, run from lustful things. As an example, this is not our rules. These are the same rules in which God has given all of us to abide by. And so with that, we put the responsibility back on the scriptures, because it's a conversation they're eventually going to have as they grow older with God, who is accountable. They're accountable to. So it takes us off the hook as parents, and they end up eventually not looking at that was mom and dad's rules or guidelines as parenting.
Yes, I would just say yes to all that. It's excellent. I think one of the biggest things, two things. The question is, yes, okay, yeah. If it's not happening in you, it won't happen through you. And as parents, if we're not willing to follow Jesus with all of our heart, why would we ever have that expectation of our kids? And so I think modeling, living out your relationship, and even just like Mick said, Mick, right? Mike, sorry. Yeah, I like Mick. I like Mike too, but like Mike said about just the aspect of when you fail. One of the things my kids have, of all the questions I've asked them as adults, one of the biggest things they said is that you modeled how to fail. I think that's an incredible compliment, because I failed a lot. And I did everything I could possibly do to get down, depending on where they were. I would get down on my knees when they were little, and I would look at them and say, listen, what Daddy did, how I said what I said, it's just wrong. And I just need to ask for your forgiveness. And so I think that's critical. The second thing that I was going to say, I lost my train of thought. So when I think of it, it'll come back. But I just think that the modeling piece is a real big deal.
I'm not good at it, but Robin's really good, and she always reminds me, which is to pray for your kids. So that's a huge thing, because the heart change piece, I think it was Wes. Wes is on, like, he's fire, by the way, when he preaches. Let's go. But he was like, the heart change piece, that's God. That's God's, that's his, right? And ours is to pray. And so Robin always reminds me, she's like, because like if we're struggling with one of our teenagers or whatever, and she's like, have you prayed for him? Or have you prayed for her or whatever? And I'm like, oh no, I haven't. And so it's like, but just pray for your kids, pray for them, right? And just continue to do that.
I remember number 2. So somebody said this a long time ago. Wow, that's all right. Somebody said this a long time ago, and I never forgot it. But they just said they asked the question, "How do you do family devotions?" And the guy who was the guy's name was Jack Hayford. I don't know if you've ever heard of that name before, but Jack he's pretty popular. And I was in the room with him when they asked the question, and you could hear the air go out of the room when he said, this is what he said. He says, we don't do family devotions. And it was just like, what? Jack Hayford? This is what he said. He says, we're a family that's devoted. And I'm like, I raised my hand immediately and said, oh, could you unpack that a little bit? What's that? And this is what he said. He says, we're committed to Jesus, and everything we do and everything we are is around Jesus. So our conversations around the table, we're just provoking them. We're asking questions. By the way, become a professional question asker. Because we go through these phases of parenting. We're cops, we're coaches, and we're consultants. Yes? We tell them what to do. Then we try to really coach them and encourage them on what to do. And then when they're older, unless you're asked, you're out. So that was too much, too quick. But yeah.
I was getting a new battery switched over. Is anybody else on that question? Great responses. Next one. All right, we're gonna hit it. For today's crazy culture and the shifts made, what age and what details / how would you address on the subject of sex, especially for boys? We want to be their source for questions, but not something our home of origin really taught us. Want me to ask it again or say it again? Just in case. Yeah, so today's crazy culture and shifts that are being made. What age and what details / how would you address on the subject of sex, especially for boys? We want to be the source for their questions, but did not have that in our upbringing or origin of taught.
No, that's a good question, and you're right, Chase. They're coming. Get right to it. No, it's a great question, and it's I have a 14-year-old boy, so all the guys in the room that when they were 14, so
Yes.
yeah. And so where I come from it is and again, this isn't shade on my father, and the way that I view any parent, the way that I view parenting is I always view that they did the best that they could with what they had, right? So I never look back and I never say, you guys are trash. Like, no, I look at what they did, and they did it to excellence, to the excellence that they could, right? With what they had. So, but sex was never talked about in my house, not openly. It wasn't like we never had conversations. It was kind of more of like the taboo, or just like, don't talk about it. So when I did start struggling with things, like that 14-year-old boys do, I went to public school. I was shown things. My friends were looking at we're looking at pornography. We're looking at different things, and it was and I didn't know. We never talked about it, and I was like, I don't. And at the same time, like, since it was never talked about, and obviously, like, I was going to church every Sunday, and I was like, man, I'm terrible for this. Like, I can't talk to anybody about this. And it was I carried that baggage. I'm probably going to share too much. That's okay though. But I carried that baggage into my marriage, and had to unpack that, and it sucked. And you can ask Robin, it sucked. And really just fall down. I mean, God has a way of just like breaking you down to the studs. Like if you think of a house, like of just breaking you down to the studs. Like when He's like, there's something in your life that's not right. But I've taken all of that, and how I approach it with my 14-year-old is I'm very like we're pretty open about, and we've gone through our own journey with him. Again, like just because you're like, I'm gonna talk to them about sex, I'm gonna talk to them about like pornography, I'm gonna talk to them about everything. They're still human beings. There's there's still temptation. They're still gonna make mistakes, and so it's like, how do you, like, when that happens, like, how do you approach it? So I think for me, and for Robin, it's being open, and like Sebastian, my 14-year-old, he knows, like, he can come to me and talk to me about like these things, right? And it's still checking in also to say, like, do you have questions, right? But then also talking about the biblical, like how does God view sex? Like, he created, it's an amazing, it's a good thing. It is a good thing. I think that a lot of times people have this, like, there's this taboo against it of being like, oh, it's bad. No, like, God created sex. Like, it's a good thing, and it's meant to be, right, in the biblical terms, between husband and wife. And so, and then also talking about, like, why, right? Because our culture is like, well, it's pleasurable, and we're a pleasure seeking culture. And so a lot of times you have people being like, well, if it feels like it's good, it feels good, and it's that instant gratification, which feeds into the culture that we live in. And so it's just talking through that with your kids to help them understand the biblical, like, biblically, what is sex all about? Why is it important? Why did God create it? And talking about how it's not just like this physical pleasure, but it's this connection between husband and wife. And I just lost my train of thought. I had like more stuff to talk about, but I don't know if Robin wants to add in or no. Yeah. So I'll pass it to one of these guys.
No, you go. Okay.
I'm just going to speak about how the auctioneer family walked through that. And if you get anything out of this, it's I want to send you to some resources as young parents that help you navigate these kind of difficulties subject-wise. We took all our kids through a purity ring contract. Do you remember the name of it or who sponsored it? Anyway, you probably know.
No, it was through, I think, Focus on the Family.
Well, yeah, I mean James Dobson, but anyway, it's a notebook contract that you sit down with your kids and you walk through them what God's word says and about their identity and who they are and why they were created, and the purposes of a husband and wife. And then they are given a token or a symbol of a ring that it's just a symbol of reminding them daily about this commitment. And they have a covenant card that they sign at the age of 12. We did it with all our kids. And it really hit home with us later in life when we started to marry off our daughters, because they handed us back our purity rings at their weddings. And it was a token that was not popular in the high schools. It wasn't popular on the wrestling mats for my son to have to take off in order to wrestle. But it was a standard in which was given to them, even if they didn't understand the significance of it at the time. They knew that it was important enough for mom and dad to sit down and walk them through this process. They signed the pledge card. We have it to this day. And it was successful. But it's just a tool for you to start with. And I think those conversations are going to happen as they arise. Right?
Yeah. So good.
I would just add to that. I think this is a great tool. If you just Google purity ring, I'm sure you'll find resources like that that are available. I would say for boys, because I had all boys, couple things that we did is Dana was really involved in our sex talks when we began to engage them in talking about sexuality. It wasn't just the guys, because we were open as a family. We talked very openly and were very transparent. More details don't make the truth any truer. So, we left out a lot of details, especially when we started engaging them. And every single one of them were at different periods, because we watched our kids. We navigated with our kids. And So I'll give you an example. One of our sons, when he was at a VBS, straight off in the VBS, he was 8 years old and found a pornographic magazine in a riverbed with 2 other kids. That was his introduction to seeing, naked women. And so the need to engage that sooner than what we had done a couple of our other boys was necessary because of what had happened. And so we walked him and navigated through that. And there's a lot more there. But the other thing that we did is we used resources. The book that I used at that time, and there's other resources out there that are newer. They're maybe even, and some that are older that are really, I think, better in some cases. But I took all my boys through a book called No Hint, which was all about lust and understanding lust and understanding scripturally where it comes from and how do we walk that out and how do we walk through that. And it was so valuable because it's all based on discussion and questions and accountability. And then the last thing I would say to you is put heroes in your kids' lives who love God like you do. And so we had mentors and young men who loved our boys and were intentional about being in their lives. We didn't force them. We paid them once in a while because it was so valuable to us and it was so incredible. But they pursued them, and so I would just say that look for heroes in your kids' lives, and look for those opportunities to engage them. And we can talk more about that at another time, but that's something that I would really encourage. And let me say this to you as parents: be pursuers of people. Look for people and look for people who are doing a good job. Maybe you see their kids and you go, wow, their kids are actually really decent, Knock on their doors until they tell you to leave or they open the door. But also look for people that have failed and have really struggled, but they're available and they're open to talk about their failures, because you can learn a lot from failure. Amen?
Yeah. So good. You've got a question, and while you before you ask, just a reminder, you can once you've texted that once, you can just text them as right back to that same thread. So don't hesitate. And if you want to follow up from something that somebody said, don't hesitate to ask for a follow up or something even more specific. But keep having those questions come in. Okay, you got some from something.
Yeah, something somebody asked me about earlier, and I'm gonna articulate it to the best of my communication ability. Okay, so another middle age, I don't know, young adolescent boy question. How do you, for those of you that have walked through this, how do you lead any girl, boy, whatever, that is really struggling with a lack of desire for engagement with anything? So just lack of a better term, laziness will just real generally this drive. So like with hygiene, with schoolwork, with motivation to get things done in the home, and there does not seem to be a lot of things. A lot has been attempted, but a lot has not. There's not much drive there. Have you experienced that, and have you seen the ability to help motivate and encourage drive in a kid? Great question.
I mean, every scenario is unique. So for us to just throw out an answer and it be the answer, I just want to set the stage there, because we don't necessarily have all the context of who and their situation, and where their family has been, or what they've been through, or what he might have experienced, or what he could be going through. But I would say we had standards in our home, and we upheld those standards, and we lived them. We practiced them. We didn't just say do this and then we sit there, So I think actively knowing what it is that you're the bar that's in your home. So, and I would say this, I mean, our kids, my wife taught our kids how to do their own laundry, how to make their own food. I mean, she was a drill sergeant in some ways, but she really taught them, and she walked with them. So they had responsibilities, and I think that's imperative. If there aren't things in place that are things that are required, and then the other thing is sometimes it's just getting them in the car. I mean, I would always take one kid with me when I went to the grocery store. And one of the things I did when they were little is I would always usually get them something. I would buy them something little. But I always do. And then I'd come home and the other kids were like, well, why did he get it? And I'm like, well, he went with me, you know? So it created this, yeah, it was a bribe. And it created this opportunity to spend time with just that kid. And so, and then other times I'd just say, no, you're coming with me. Yeah, you are. You're coming with me. And this isn't a decision. This isn't. We're going to sit here and talk about this. You're actually coming with me. And sometimes we got to push our kids out. And there's this whole fear of we can't offend them. Well, listen, you're not called to be their friend. Not now. You're called to be their parent. And sometimes you got to make hard decisions. And sometimes you've got to lead them to places that maybe they don't want to go. And so I would just. I don't know if I'm really answering that question, but those are just some thoughts. Concerning that, so.
Again, it's kind of hard to say without knowing the whole scenario, but I would also get down to the heart of it, because a lot of times it may look like laziness or something else, but I would try to have conversations like, is there something else going on, like a deeper heart problem, whether because I don't even know the age of this kid or anything else, but a lot of times kids are doing things like this because there's something else a lot deeper going on, and sometimes it's hard for them to even put into words. And so kind of digging in and finding, is there something else that's kind of behind all of the behaviors too?
Good question. This one's more for the younger, on the younger side, for some of the this is both dads and moms, but I hear this more from younger mamas, and we've experienced this probably in the last 6 years. I'm thinking of how old our kids are. 6 years. We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. So we're in the heat of that too. But how would you encourage just an exhausted, overwhelmed mama in the season of having littles, trying to navigate who am I while I'm mom? How do I still live in my purpose? Is my purpose just this? I have conversations. I know you have conversations. Obviously, I don't have these. I hear this. I know this is our conversations at times too. But just any encouragement you'd give to some exhausted, tired, and maybe overwhelmed or discouraged mamas with how did you get through some of those seasons, or see your spouses get through those seasons, and just words of encouragement to them. And
I think for one, so we have a lot of kids. We have 12, and 4 of our kids have disabilities, so they need a lot. But I would say, and it's something that I probably wasn't very good at first parenting, but expectations, because there's, and I feel like social media plays into a lot of this expectation of what we need to be as a parent. And a lot of times in our house, our kids are either really dressed up really cute, when you see them, or they're in pajamas. That's reality. And really, I look at my sole focus right now is I'm raising these kids, they're gifts that God's given me, and my job is to steward them. That's my main job. And Mike, he knows there's I'm not a huge I look at self-care different, and I know everyone feels something different about self-care, but for me, I know that this is the purpose. God's given me these kids to raise up. This is a season. We wake up with multiple kids every single night. I don't even know the last time we slept through the night. But this is not forever, because we have older kids. They've gone through that already. You don't have to. I honestly, my tip is I just put on makeup and then wear it for 3 days straight. You don't have to be. I'm not the crafty mom, so, and I know that about myself. So I think that sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to do things that we think that we have to do to be a good parent. And that's just not it. Like some of us cook and some of us don't, and that's okay. Like we don't have to do that. God's given each of us gifts, and when we use those gifts to the best and just enjoy that time with our kids, it takes off a lot of like the stress and the overwhelm.
I would go, Lisa, please.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, you're in this season and just enjoy it. It goes so fast, and I am so glad actually that that social media and stuff was not when I was raising my kids. This is tough for you guys. This is really tough. And you know, raising we had 5 kids. It was tough without social media and all of the expectations that is put on you guys to be this perfect Pinterest mommy and everything. But just don't put those expectations on yourself, and just love those kids and be there. There will be hard days, there will be fun days, and you know, God's got you right where he wants you to be. And it's you're their mamas, and you know what they need, and just
I would just speak to the dads and to the couples. I think expectations was talked about a lot. I think really understanding expectations for each other. You know, if you're a mom who's working in the home, did you hear I said that? Right? Because I hear a lot of times where they say, well, the wife stays home. You know, like it's a joy. You know, hey man, it is a ton of work, and I just think having clear communication between the two of you of what your roles are, how you're going to function together. The other thing is one thing that I really tried to do that we really worked at is that when I got home, I took over to the best of my ability. I mean, when the babies were little and there was breastfeeding or those kinds of things, there's only so much I can do. But I really tried to take over. I really tried to take a lot of the weight, the pressure, bathe the kids, put them in bed, you know, I mean, that kind of stuff. So and I'm not saying that because I was so incredible, because we struggled through it, you know, but we communicated, and that was the thing that saved our lives, is we were clear about what it is we were trying to accomplish, and it is a season, and it is a ton of work, you guys. If we're gonna listen, we can raise our kids or we can train our kids, and there's a huge difference, right? And it's really easy to just kind of put you know, and I'm not. Don't take this personal if it's something, but we can just put these little screens in front of them and let them entertain them. And I'm telling you, man, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of work. And I'm not opposed to screens in any way. I'm just saying, when we allow those things to be the things that lead them, it really is a huge issue. But it's a lot of work, and so you're going to be tired. I know you're tired. I'm tired just talking about all this, but it's a lot of work, and I don't know if anybody's a single parent, but I just want to say to the single parent, man, if you're here or you're watching, I'm just so proud of you that you're here or that you're watching. So well done, mom or dad, and you stay in the fray, you stay in the fight, and I would say to you, look for a family or a couple that can adopt you. And really go after that. And I don't mean that because you're needy. I mean that because you need it. Because you need that. And we had a few single parents that we just adopted and just became a part of our family, and we just cared for them and really helped them through some of these times, because it's tiring. So when you got to be mom and dad, whew, and I don't mean to go off on that, but I just think it is a lot of work. But I'm telling you this: if we'll pay the price now, we won't pay the price later. And so, and our kids have to choose, and they will choose. But I'm telling you, the opportunities for us to train and equip and raise our kids up to serve the Lord, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. So
Something that pertains to this, but then also as I just think about kind of a rhythm that we really tried to adopt with that social media side of things, like how much of a failure I have felt in so many moments and seasons of days because I'm scrolling and looking at like my close friends and going like, gosh, man, I'm not doing what Kelsey's doing or this person's doing. Right? Like, I just, his daughter-in-law is what I'm thinking of because she's such a great mom. But like my close people even next to me, and then these people that I don't even know who they are. Like, I know their name because of social media, but like that constant feeling of failure. And so recognizing how healthy and life-giving it is to disconnect from that. But we really intentionally, we Sabbath on Saturdays for the most part. We really have tried to implement that. And so we disconnect from social media on Saturdays. And like my soul longs for it. And I recognize in myself, like I'm so much healthier on those days because I'm not giving these like behind my thought messages of like, I'm failing or I'm not doing good enough as a mom or I'm not doing good enough in this area. And so just that piece, social media, disconnect from it in places to get that rhythm for your heart and your soul and just in parenting, I think. And then another thing of just like that, getting friends around you that are in the similar parenting season. And I'm sure you guys know that, but just like that is something that so much has encouraged my souls on those days. I'm just like, I don't want to. I can text a friend and even be able to have like that safe place. So life-giving.
Anybody else on this one before?
I have one thing.
Yeah.
It's real short. It's get good at asking for help. So that's something that Robin and I are still learning, but get good at asking for help. I know that when we first entered into the adoption journey for the very first time, one of my good friends, we had lunch together, and I told him, I said, man, I suck at asking for help. And he said, this is God's opportunity for you to get good at asking for help. So if you're a single parent out there, if you're not a single parent and you're parenting together and things are just rough, get good at asking for help. And it also ties into Pastor Wes's sermon from this last Sunday, which is why the church is so important. The church is so important. Community is so important. Again, Robin and I are learning this like still, right? The community is so important for many, 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 many reasons. But you would be surprised when you ask for help how many people will rise up and help you.
Yeah, and I have to speak on that because I remember having 4 under 4 and one day just calling Dave at work going, I can't do this. I cannot do this. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. My day was done. And he's just like, okay. That's what he said, okay. And he hung up the phone. He, at work couldn't do anything. And it was just like, okay, here I sit, 4 under 4. 15 minutes later, Edie Broker, love her to death. She walks in the door. She goes, where are the babies? She got them all settled. David made a phone call to Edie. Yes, he did. He did. He made a phone call. Small detail.
Edie just got a sense.
He said,
I'm gonna go over.
But he made a phone call to Edie, and within 15 minutes, she was at the house. Where are the babies? She took care of them. She fixed me lunch and a cup of tea, and the rest of my day, that was it. And it was just like, thank you. That's, Edie, that's what I needed. Thank you, David, for making the phone call. But it was just like, they're there. And she still is just like, and the families are out there. So.
That's really good. So lots of kids are represented here. It's maybe safe to say that with all of them, you didn't have this same, that they didn't all embody or share your same passions, interests, desires, and maybe some had more than others. How did you, or are you, if you're still in that season, because I'm sure even that this applies for those that have kids that are out of the house now. How did you navigate pursuing children that maybe didn't have the same passion or the same interests? Because there's some that made it probably easy to go hang out and go do stuff, and others that like weren't in the same. How did you navigate that for the parents that are in here going like, man, one of my sons loves football and I love football, and the other one wants nothing to do with it. He just wants to build Legos, and I can't stand Legos. Like, how do you do that? How did you do that? Kind of open it up.
Mike, go ahead.
Again, I'm gonna go back to get good at asking for help. No, but I think that just like one of my daughters, our oldest daughter, like really is into horses. I don't know anything about horses. Like I know they poop a lot. I don't know. Like I don't know a ton about horses though. But we know people who know a lot about horses. We know people that have horses, and so we reach out to those people to say, hey, like my daughter like is so into horse, like she loves horses. Is there any way that we could get her out riding, or that we could get her just like out learning about this particular thing? And then in other instances, like Chase, that's a perfect example. I'm a person that really doesn't like building Legos, but I love sports. And I think it's just because I grew up with a brother who was like really good at Legos, and he would always be like, that sucks. And so then I just took, so I grew up with I'm just like, well, then I hate that. I hate Legos. But I also think like just being able to push yourself as a parent too, to step into those like uncomfortable, like, man, I really don't like this, but it's an opportunity to connect with your kid, and also give them the opportunity to show you something that maybe you don't know. Like I'll use my daughter again, who's like a killer at crochet. She's really good, and I don't know anything about crocheting. But she'll talk to me about these different crochet patterns, and I don't know, I'm just like, okay, but I'll sit and I'll listen and be like, that's amazing. And then I'll look at what she's made, and I'll be like, I could if I had 30 years to do this, I couldn't do it. And if someone was like, we'll pay you $1 million to do this, I'd be like, I'm not getting the million. I don't know. It's not happening. But I think just as a parent, just being willing to step into that space, and be like, just trying to find out what your kids are interested in, and then pushing yourself to do it.
I think the other thing is really allowing our kids to be who they are, and not. And it's hard because we're a football family. We had two boys that played collegiate football, so we love football. And I would say our whole family loves football, but Wesley, when he was a little boy, he was littler. I mean, some of his brothers are huge. And Wesley was little, and he was just getting creamed, man. He was just getting manhandled because he was just little. And I'll never forget, he came into our room one night and he just broke down and started weeping. And he just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm getting killed, And there was an expectation on him. He felt like he was completely letting down his family. And I said, baby, listen, you be you, and you be the best you can be. And so we called a family meeting, and he was shaking. He was so afraid that he was going to disappoint his brothers. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. But I said, hey, guys, Wes needs to share something. And he just opened his mouth and he just started bawling. He couldn't even talk. So I kind of spoke for him and just said, hey, Wes is ready. And then he was able to get his voice back, and through tears, he just said, I just don't want to do this anymore, but I don't want to hurt you guys. And my oldest boy walked over. Wesley was pretty little at the time, and he just picked him up and he just held him. And then he said to him, he says, you do what you do. He says, and we'll show up with pom-poms and we will cheer you on. And his thing was music and singing and choir. And I mean, these guys showed up, and it was a beautiful thing. But we gotta let them be who they are, and we gotta champion them to be who they are, and really believe in them. So.
Good. I knowing the two of you couples, more than I know you guys. I've heard something that's even come out in some of the answers tonight. But I would love for you to expound a little bit more on it and the value you saw in it, and how you would encourage others that are like, I heard. How do you do that? You said a family meeting. I've heard you guys talk about that as well. Maybe not called the same thing, but similar. You know, how was that of value for you? How did you develop that? When did it start? And what are some tips with that for younger families, or maybe they're in it, but they feel like it's too late. It's not that culture in my family. My kids are in elementary or middle school, and to call a family meeting, I'd feel fake, or they'd be like, "What are you doing, Dad or Mom?" What, just anything to that. Could you speak into it and encourage some people with that idea?
We've always cultivated an environment where our kids could come to us at any age with anything. There's a place in our kids' lives where we did exactly that. I would call a family meeting, and it was a moment of seriousness. Dad wants us in the living room. This must be something good or heavy. We're either going to Disneyland or we didn't take the garbage out on time, right? But there's another side of it. Because we created that openness, that consistency of the family gathering to do family business, it tailed in later in life when even when our girls were dating, because they knew before prom dates were asked that the son had to come and ask, or the date had to come and ask me for permission for the responsibility of my daughter for one evening, and that required then a trip to my office. And I've had guys over the years in times past come back to me years later and say, "Dude, my parents were like, just take a girl. Who cares? Here's some money." But when you required me to come and meet you in your office, it set a standard, and it set an environment for me to be on my best behavior, because I didn't have to just please you. I had to please your whole family because you were a team. And that interview process even got more serious when you have a son-in-law coming in into the family and stuff. And we have just applauded our daughters for making good decisions in that, and our sons for the most part as well. But family meetings, consistency, and that is the dinner table. Consistency. There are two places in our home where we had the best times and the most serious talks, and that was our dinner table and our fire pit. There's something about sitting in the backyard around a fire that's non-threatening. You stare at it, it's mesmerizing, and just things start to flow, right? And it's an atmosphere that is just so comfortable for them to be able to finally discuss things that are in their lives. Really so good. Create those, because it's not always a family vacation. You're so busy. It's those unpredicted moments.
Little, when the kids around the dinner table, young. So when you're talking fire pits, as they're older and they still come home, and we still have those.
Well, it's game night around the table now.
And
Go Catan.
And Sundays.
I would. Those are just really good. I would say so. Devotions were a huge part of our family. We were a family that was devoted. We didn't just do devotions, but yeah. So it morphed throughout the years. We started young. We would always pray together when they were little, and we always did this. It was something that we always did. But then we started reading the Bible together. We would do that typically in the evening is when we would do it. But then we started, as they grew older, we just got creative, and we asked them what they would want. We involved them in the process of what would be cool, or what would be an opportunity, what could we do. So I mean, we did things from going on walks to, you know, doing like special things, but we always met together, and we always finished our evenings, even as they got older, even as teenagers. One really cool thing we did for about 2 years is we walked through a series called Jesus Freaks, and it was a series of books that was written about young people who were martyred for Christ. They literally their lives they gave their lives for Christ, and it was just this engaging thing. And we just took turns reading, and we would read parts of a chapter or whatever, and then we'd just discuss it. Man, you know, like what do you think it was like, or you know. So we just got creative with that, but we created this idea of meeting together. So when we had to have, you know, discussions as a family, it wasn't uncommon for us to come together. Or we would say, hey, we need to do this. The other thing we did is every Monday was family dinner, and that was just always there. And even as they got older and they got married, we just made it available. No pressure, but they could always come if they wanted to. So Monday was family dinner, and so that was really powerful. Another thing we did, especially as they got older, is we had a exercise ball, you know, the big balls, and we always had it in our room, and we told them this is always open. We always left our door open to our room, especially at night, you know, with the exception of certain times. But we always tried to leave our door open because we always told them our door is always open. You can always come talk to us. And I'm telling you, some of the greatest moments of my kids' lives and my life is when they would come and sit on that ball, and they would laugh, they would weep, they would share their hearts, but they always knew that they could come, and they would sit there and bounce on this ball. And they would have these hard conversations, but they'd just be bouncing on this ball, and it just kind of, I don't know, it was like therapy, you know, it did something. So it doesn't have to be a ball, but I just think creating a space and a place where they know they can always come.
Can I allude to that? Let's share you once again what we did, which we thought was successful, we always prayed with our kids before they left our home in a circle before they went to school. But how we finished our day was more important. Is since our kids were really small, I would sit in the hallway in the dark with a flashlight, and we would read this book called Sticky Situations. And it was real life scenarios about how you would orchestrate. And it was a multiple choice at the end of the story, how the different answers and and a lot of those answers were really good answers. But these kids they're all tucked into bed. We said prayers, and then the last thing they heard was a story or a scenario. And it got them thinking, and then you would hear them in the dark, from room to room to room, talk about why they thought one reason was better than the other. But it was all biblically based. And then it would be like 3 scriptures to confirm why that one multiple choice question was. But it was, once again, in the dark with a flashlight. And Dad was reading, sitting on the floor, and that's how they went to bed. Thinking about, and it's not that moral value that you have to beat them into submission with the Bible of God's word. It's creating these scenarios that they figure it out themselves through these lies of other lives that people have lived out through stories.
Good.
And then another thing too is I think everybody's heard Jesus calling for adults and Jesus calling for kids. That is something just even quick in the morning that even for pre-COVID and even COVID, I did with our high schooler that we would have just in the morning quickly, or sometimes it wasn't quickly, but we would just go through each day, just read a devotion, and then like Dave had alluded to, when it was all 5 of the kids, we would, before everybody left in the morning, just in the entryway, just pray with everybody, and then everybody would go on their way, and then it dwindled down 4, 3, 2, 1. And that was just another thing that we did. And then, you know, even as a senior, you know, our son, we still did that. It's like, okay, we're doing our devos, right, Mom? And it was just kind of cool to do it with the seniors too.
We have, I mean, we call family meetings typically like what they were saying for any situations where if we just need to get everybody on the same page. For us, it looks a little bit different. You know, obviously we have a 3-month-old, but we also have a 16-year-old. So in the, you know, you call everybody into the room. We have a bonus room that can hold everybody. And it's usually just to, if it's, we need to deliver a message, because we have like, I don't have it printed out right now, but we have a chart that has like what folks are responsible, like what kids are responsible for what. And so typically it could be, you know, if we're getting off track of that or whatever, I'm a business person. Like I love like organizational management, and just like I love that stuff. That's what I went to school for. So a lot of times I use the analogy of how an organization runs, because our family is big. So if if my kids were here, my older ones would roll their eyes, because I've talked to them a lot of times about the importance of all of us working together, just like in an organization, in a business. It's not one person that makes things work. So we've had multiple, and we do call family meetings for that type of thing. Or if there's good news to share, things like that, we call everybody together. Again, it looks a little bit different because a couple of our kids are non-mobile. So and also like mentally they're like Yulia's like 9 months old. She's 4 years old, but mentally she's 9 months old. So they're part of the thing. They come in and like sit there, but they're also playing and kind of making noises and things like that. But the kids know, because we don't do it every single day. So when we say, hey, time for a family meeting or time for us to get together to talk, they're like, okay, like we got it. We also make it a priority because, you know, both Robin and I grew up where like family dinner was like always prioritized. Like and so that's something that we always try to prioritize. Again, it looks a little bit different sometimes, right? Because our family's really big, and some of the kids eat differently than what you typically see, and so it looks different. But just being around that dinner table, we specifically bought a dinner table. It's like freaking massive. I mean, I think it stretches out to like 20 feet, 25 feet. I don't know. It's like huge. Everybody in this room could come over right now. We could have dinner, and fit there, be fine. So, but yeah, so making that a priority, because it really is critical to have those times, those moments to be able to connect as a family, and just know that it looks different. Like what you hear up here, what you hear us saying, there's not a right answer. Like there's not just like, oh, that's the right answer. Okay, I got to make sure that I'm doing that. No, like it's going to look different for you. Just make sure that you're creating that time to where you can come together as a family to discuss things. So that way you can feel like, whether you want to call it a team, organization, whatever analogy you want to use, but just having those moments to where you can have that connection.
One more here from the texts that have come in, and then I've got one to close up our time. This has been awesome, by the way, guys. Thanks so much for sharing just the nuggets. This one just kind of two parts. One for mom specifically. How do you take care of your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being while caring for everybody else's, to a degree, right? Your family. And then alongside of that, encouragement to parents who have kids who are struggling with mental health issues. Just anybody that would speak to that. And that's just something that we're seeing, especially in today's culture. Just that world is becoming more and more difficult for parents to navigate, as that continues to grow with kids. And you add COVID on top of all that, and pandemic stuff on top of all that, just gets more and more difficult. But just thoughts on that for the mamas. How do you do it for you, caring for all that while you're caring for others, and then encouragement for parents that have kids with mental health issues?
I don't know. I'm the best one for this one. I would say, well, okay, I don't work out, but I feel like chasing my kids, and like there's things that you can do with kids, and like one of our sons, he doesn't walk, and he's a big boy, and his room's upstairs, so I feel like that's my exercise. But there's like a lot of things I think you can do with your kids that helps, like keeping you active and healthy. I don't I don't know. This is the best for. I drink protein shakes. He actually will make them for me because sometimes I do. I forget to eat because it's easy to get up and you're running around. You're trying to take care of all the kids. Multiple kids of ours have to take medication, so I'm off doing all that. So I would say like I find things that are easy. I also do like meal prepping because that is gives you the chance to eat better, but it's not going to take up a ton of your time. I'm somebody who likes to try to use my time the best that I can. Like I am always trying to find ways to like improve that time. So I definitely do that. And then I think I would say like also because I'm sure it's different because like in different seasons of your life, it's sometimes it can be hard like having like for a while Mike and I went through where we would like make sure that we would take all the kids away and let like that one person pray for a specified amount of time. Like I will make sure that no one comes in, interrupts and things like that. Sometimes that's tough. Depending on like right now we have our 3-month-old, it's really fussy. So like things like that can be tough, but there's still like the when you first wake up, like that is probably like even if you know like it's just the best way to start your day. Like even though you know you have like already a whole bunch of stuff that you need to do, just taking that 5 minutes. The Bible app has tons. I prefer like reading out of the Bible, but if like the Bible app also has like tons of devotionals you can do and starting your day off connecting like that and then just having like a continual conversation with God throughout the day. That it doesn't have to be that you are going off and like praying by yourself for 30 minutes or something, but connecting throughout the day because that is doable. And then finding the space where you can ask your spouse, like, I need a day or I need some time to like have more like time to pray. But you can really just like just being in constant communion with God throughout the day.
So good.
Yeah, I guess I would say the same thing for myself is the first, few minutes or, half hour, you maybe can't get a half hour. Just that first moments in the morning just for yourself and with the Lord, just get away. That if I don't have that, um, the day just doesn't go right until I get that time. So that's what I need, and that's what I've always needed to get going. That's my self care for my day. So I think if you can get that.
It's a great modeling for our kids to watch their mother get up and before she even feeds herself, she spends some time with the Lord. And then she's done that for a long time. The other side of that is she's got the ability to be able to say no. I know that we had started this saying, say yes as many times as you can to your kids, but there is a time for healthiness and to be able to say no as a mother, to say, I need this time for myself. And the kids will respect that. And they'll actually help out so they can sense when mom's not healthy. So being able to say no.
I would just speak on behalf of my wife because I know what she would say. One is if you don't plan for yourself, nobody else will. And so, but here's the other thing: is in this season of life, wherever you are with what age group, plans are meant to be made, but they're also if you can allow flexibility. Some personalities have a real hard time with that. But just knowing that at any moment something can change, and so if you don't get the first of your day there, you can find it somewhere else. And sometimes it's 10 minutes. Sometimes she used to just put her Bible on the counter, and she's got kids because we homeschooled for like 12 years, so she's doing so many things, but she just open her Bible and she would just read something out loud, and just so she could hear the word, not just see it. So just looking for every opportunity, and I love what Lisa said. Robin said this about being mindful. I just think it's so imperative, you guys. We have got to invite the Holy Spirit to direct and orchestrate our steps every single day. And you don't have to get on your knees and prostrate yourself to talk to him. You can just open your mouth and begin to communicate. And you can say, I'm overwhelmed, Lord. I don't know what I'm going to do right now. I mean, those are conversations. That's prayer. That's talking to God. So looking for every opportunity that is before us in our daily lives, and as crazy as it can be, it's amazing how God can bring peace. The Bible says that he whose mind is stayed on him, he will grant perfect peace because they trust in him. And we trust him, and we have to. But when we stayed our mind, when we purpose to bring our minds back to the chaos of what we're dealing with, and remember that he's right there, it really can make a difference.
So,
Part of my job, I mean, I train fitness in the mornings, and so I get part of like that's what I am forced to do, even though I don't want to do it sometimes. Like I get that self care in that sense, because that's what I do. And so sometimes I go right into that, into like work mode, because I'm really tired and I want the like 5 extra minutes of lying there in bed, or I didn't prepare for writing a workout the night before, and so like I'm like jump right into work mode, and then I know I'm going right into mom mode as I walk inside, because I train outside in a shed. And then, but those days that I neglect taking that time with the Lord right at the beginning, I just tailspin and I spiral, and it's a hot mess the second I walk in the door, and it's yeah. So we see that. But those moments where I go like, "Hey, mommy's not doing well. I need some time with Jesus." The shift that my kids go like, "Ooh, yeah." Like my 4-year-old recognizes like, "Oh, you need to read your Bible and spend time with Jesus right now, because mommy's going to be healthier and mommy's going to be a lot kinder and nicer if you do that." And so like those moments where I recognize like I've got to force it in, or yesterday I read out loud with Delaney, because I was like, she's crazy right now. I'm going to read my Bible out loud, and like right, those things, there's a shift in atmosphere. She has no clue what's being said. But that planning, and then relationship, like having a relationship, having our life group, the woman in our life group, it's a game changer for that world for me.
yeah. If you last one, because we're already at the end of it, but just in case there's a quick hot one there, and this is because I know there are a lot of parents that are, in our church, also here tonight watching. We've had 8 or 9 people watching consistently online while we've been going the whole time tonight too. So, when you think about your kids when they were younger, so I'm thinking like, birth through elementary. Yeah, so I'm setting it up. Birth through elementary, so before middle school and high school. The mundane of the day-to-day stuff. Is there anything that you sitting here right now you think back on and you go, I miss that. I wish I could go back and experience that, or I loved that. I wish it's something where like if someone's like, this for me right now, I don't even see it. It's inconvenient, it's whatever, but it's gone like that. And you're sitting on this side of it going back to some of those early crazy chaos days, going like, I kind of just if I could have a moment like that again with my kids, I treasure it, to help maybe some parents in that season go, oh, okay, maybe I can see that right now and not miss that in the same way. Is there anything that stands out that you miss?
I would just say real quick, because I'm sure there's some really good answers here in this. I would say, do I miss that? I would say I just miss the season. I mean, if I was to say this is your life, birth, your life. This is how much time you have with your kids, and then it's gone. And being on the other side of that now, it just goes so fast. Elisa said it already, but it just goes so quickly. And so I know it can feel mundane, it can feel overwhelming, it can feel all of those things all at the same time. But I'm telling you, this moment is going to be gone. So recognizing that you are in a season and God has given you the gift of this season, and he's given you this as an opportunity to pour your life out on behalf of your kids. Man, seize the day. I mean, just suck it up, okay, if I can say that, because it's so worth it. It really is. And pursue people, look for opportunities, ask for help. Listen to these words that have been shared, and it's just because it will be gone.
Before I hand it over to Lisa, our greatest investment from the beginning of our marriage was going to be our kids. And so we knew there was going to be dry seasons and triumph seasons. But I have to say that those kids, well, I lost it for a second here, but not only is the greatest investment, well, I'll come back to that. I can't say it without crying.
Well, because I know what you're going to say. Oh. Oh, goodness. Yes, when Chase was talking about when Chase was talking about birth to middle school, grade elementary. That is such a short window, and it just, when he said that, what popped into my mind was, and I happened to glance at the clock, was it's 8 o'clock, and that is bedtime, and just putting my babies to bed, and I miss that, and just those were the times. I miss that.
It's documenting. We would write journals about the experiences our kids gave us, from makeup all over the tables to we could tell stories forever, right? But in those moments, as tough as they are, when you're cleaning up so many different things and creativity of their minds, document it with pictures. But write journals, because they're great stories for around that campfire experience, once again, that we're talking about, because you're on the other side of it.
I don't know if mine's mundane, but it's like your kids coming up and wanting to be held and snuggled, because you don't know the last day that they want to be held, until all of a sudden you realize they're not coming up and wanting to be held by you. And then it's gone, and then it's too late. So enjoy that. Our 5-year-old wants to be held all the time, all the time. But one day she's not going to want that, and I know that we will miss that.
I would say the same thing. I mean, it's funny that question was asked, because we were just talking, Robin and I were talking about that, because we got away for a little bit over to Long Beach, and we were just talking through some things, and our parenting journey, just like all of yours, is different, right? Everybody's is different. And so one of the things that we talked about, though, is we do have 4 kids that have a lot of different medical disabilities, and there are moments when we're taking care of them, like I had to learn how to do a catheter, and I never thought, like, when I was younger, I'm going to learn how to do that. But there's moments of taking care of these kids where I'm like, man, this is tough. Like, this is hard. And this goes for all of you too, just taking care of your kids. It doesn't have to be somebody who's medically fragile. Just taking care of them, changing the diapers, whatever. And it's just like, one day this is going to be, for us, like, there's the potential of one day it's going to be gone. I'm going to look back and be like, if I could just, I would give anything to get that one day. Like, anything. I would give everything I have to be able to have that one day back, so I could change their diaper. And it's just, I think about it all the time, and I don't mean to get emotional. I'm okay with crying. That's okay. But it's also made me think for my other kids too, like, just like Robin was saying, it's like one day they're not going to want to be picked up anymore. And I'll look back and just be like, man, I just want to hold you. I want to pick you up, but you're 25 years old, so that might look weird. I'll still do it, but no. But yeah, it's just, it can go so quick. So it's the fact that you're asking that question is so good. It's so good because that means you're thinking about it. And so you can be intentional.
Well, guys, thanks for imparting, sharing, opening up your lives, and all of the questions that you responded to. Treasure it. It's gold, and we'll do another one of these in the near future. I know this was for Holly and I. This is our season. We're in it, and to have people in our lives that we are looking at how they're parenting or how they've parented, and just go, well done, well done, and we want to model like that, and we want to be a resource for the people that are in the same season. So thanks for sharing part of your lives with us tonight and your time. Thanks for coming. I'm going to pray and then get us out of here so we can go love on our kiddos, put them to bed. God, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for these incredible people up here, and really the story of what you've done through their lives and their families, and are doing in their lives and in their families. It's not done. Thanks for the legacy. Thank you for grace. Thank you for laughter and tears and all of the stuff in between. We just give you glory tonight. I pray for everybody that's listened tonight or will watch this and listen later, that you would just encourage them by your Spirit, that they have what they need in you, and where they might think that they are at the end of themselves, great. That's where they begin to run into you in a fresh way. I pray you would fill them up with your Spirit and your presence, and to help them be the moms and dads or guardians that you've called them to be. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Hey, I got one more thing, so I'm so sorry.
No,
it's
do
just,
it.
I feel like I have to. So there was one question that we didn't answer, and it was the mental health piece. And I just want to make, I'll just real quick, is whoever asked that question, again, I come back to community. I come back to, one, don't take it all on yourself and be like, man, because the way that they're acting is because it's my fault. What did I do? What have I done? But just know that there's a ton of resources out there, and so start just reaching out. Like whoever you know, it could be Pastor Chase, and maybe the person that you reach out to doesn't know, but just find resourceful. I know Chase is resourceful. I could be like, dude, where can I get if I went to Chase and I was like, and he may not know anything. I know you know about bow hunting, but if I was, so let me use a different example. If I was to go to Chase and I'm like I want a racing steed, I want a racing horse, he's not gonna know necessarily and be like, oh yeah, this is the one you get, but he will find out for me. So I know it's a weird, dumb example, but if I were to go to Chase and say, hey, my kid is struggling with this thing, and I feel like I need something, I need help. I know that Chase would be either find me somebody who can help me, or he would find something. Again, we come back to the church. It is so critical to get plugged in. It is so critical. Make yourself known. Meet people. Greet people. Just come up and be like, hey, my name's Mike. It's nice to meet you. Get to know your the church. This is your people. We're your family, right? We are your family. And so if you're going through something where you're parenting a child that has mental health issues, just again, I would suggest it's getting involved, reaching out and getting those resources. Have your talk to your pastor. It's because you want that biblical, you want a biblical based view, but you also need to have it's multiple approach, right? Because you also need to bring in there may be you may need some help from, if it's a psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever. I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but just know that there's resources for you, and reach out, and don't be like, well, I don't want to reach out because I don't know if they're going to know. Pastors are always great to start with. They can talk to me too.
No, absolutely, 100%. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. And by the way, that number is available once you've texted that thread for anything. If you're like, hey, I don't know where this is at for this thing I heard about at the church, we monitor it throughout the week and stuff. So just so you know in the future, if you've got questions, or when we do one of these again, send some questions in, and we'll start cataloging them and get ready. Maybe we have a more specific night in the future for a specific parenting topic. So, but thanks for being here. Will you do me a favor if you do have kids and you go pick them up, will you just give an extra thank you to the volunteers who came tonight and helped watch kids so we could be here, because they're amazing. So, love you. Have a great night. See you hopefully on Sunday.